Reddit, what's a time you followed instructions exactly out of pure spite and it backfired on whoever gave them? You know, I've never been a petty guy. I work in a corporate office where I mind my business, do my job, and get along with most people. But sometimes life hands you a golden opportunity to obey out of pure, spiteful glee. And when it does, you take it. It all started about 6 months ago when a new junior associate, let's call him Trevor, joined our department. Trevor came in fresh out of college, full of energy, ambition, and the kind of arrogance only a 23-year-old who's read half of a leadership book can muster. The first few weeks, Trevor was harmless enough. But soon, he began taking an unhealthy interest in the shared office kitchen, specifically its cleanliness. Now, I won't lie, our kitchen isn't the tittiest place. It's a classic open-floor office, 30 people, 1 fridge, 1 coffee machine, 1 microwave, and an ever-present supply of passive-aggressive notes about cleaning up after yourself. One day, after a team meeting, Trevor announced loudly in the break room, "It's honestly gross how nobody here respects the kitchen space." A few of us rolled our eyes and carried on. Then came the notes. Oh, the notes! Printed on bright neon paper and taped everywhere. "Please wash your mugs. Your mother doesn't work here. Clean up crumbs immediately. Label your stuff or lose it. I'm a coffee guy. I bring in my own beans, grind them fresh, and keep them in a small labeled jar in the kitchen cabinet. I also keep a reusable mug and a few sugar packets in my drawer. I clean up after myself, always have." But despite that, Trevor's notes started appearing on the coffee machine and right above my jar. One day, I found a fresh sticky note on my container. "Shared items should be properly labeled for accountability." Really? My own stuff? I decided to have a polite word. "Hey Trevor, just so you know, that coffee jar's mine. I bring it in myself." He gave me this smug look and said, "Well, then you should definitely label it more clearly. It's about setting standards." Okay, game on. That very afternoon, HR sent out a company-wide email undoubtedly inspired by Trevor's campaign that said, "As a reminder, all personal items in the kitchen should be clearly labeled." That was it. That was all the invitation I needed. I went to the nearest office supply store, bought a giant roll of bold, black, "Hello, my name is" labels, a thick permanent marker, and 2 more boxes of sugar packets just for fun. That night, I spent a good hour labeling everything I owned in that kitchen. My coffee jar now read "Property of Dave, do not touch." Every sugar packet said "Dave's hands OFF." My mug had my full name and a hand-drawn angry face on it. The napkins? Dave's napkins. Even the spoon I used was labeled "Dave's spoon." When I was done, it looked like the kitchen had been taken over by an overzealous brand ambassador named Dave. And I wasn't finished yet. The next morning, I came in early, grabbed my coffee, and waited. It didn't take long. Around 9:15 a.m., Trevor strolled in with his ever-present stainless steel water bottle and his usual "I'm going to change office culture" swagger. He poured himself some water, turned toward the coffee area, and froze. The look on his face was priceless. He stared at my labeled empire in stunned silence. For a moment, he just blinked, processing the sight of every sugar packet, every napkin, even the lone spoon with "Dave's spoon" scrawled across it in fat black marker. I kept my face neutral, sipping from my boldly labeled mug like nothing was out of the ordinary. Then he turned to me and said, voice dripping with condescension, "Dave, this is excessive. You're making a mockery of the shared space." I smiled and replied, "I'm just following HR's guidelines, Trevor. They said we should clearly label personal items. I figured it was best to be thorough." And then casually, "You wouldn't want anyone confusing my sugar packets for shared property, right?" Trevor fumed. I could tell he wanted to argue, but he couldn't say I'd broken any rules because I hadn't. I'd done exactly what HR, and by extension, Trevor, had asked. Obeyed out of spite. But the story doesn't end there. Later that afternoon, as luck would have it, the regional manager, a very no-nonsense woman named Sandra, was visiting for quarterly check-ins. She made her usual rounds, chatting with managers, and eventually wandered toward the break room. I was there, refilling my mug. Sandra stopped mid-step. "What in the world is going on here?" she asked, laughing and pointing at the absurd number of labeled items. Before I could respond, Trevor happened to walk in. Sandra looked at him. "Is this some kind of prank?" Now cornered, Trevor launched into a nervous explanation about maintaining kitchen standards and encouraging accountability. But as he rambled, Sandra's amused smile faded. Trevor, this is an office kitchen, not a military base. We're here to work, not stress over coffee spoons. She turned to me, still smiling. Dave, you certainly followed the guidelines, perhaps more enthusiastically than necessary. I shrugged innocently, just trying to be a team player. Later that day, word spread that Sandra had spoken privately to our department head about the kitchen drama. The next morning, all of Trevor's neon notes were mysteriously gone. An updated HR email came through. Friendly reminder, please be respectful in shared spaces. Excessive posting of unofficial notices is discouraged. Trevor avoided eye contact with me for a week. As for me, I left the labels on my stuff for another month just in case. And that, friends, is how I obeyed out of spite and won the coffee war. I never imagined I'd become that guy, the one who goes to war with his HOA over lawn maintenance. But sometimes life hands you the shears, and you gotta start snipping. For background, I live in a perfectly average suburban neighborhood. Nice homes, decent neighbors, the usual white vinyl fences and cul-de-sacs. And like many neighborhoods, ours has a homeowners association. I've always kept my lawn in perfectly good shape. Trimmed once a week, watered, no brown patches, no overgrowth. My mower is older, but it does the job. Never had a complaint. Enter Marlene. About 3 months ago, Marlene became the new HOA president. Middle-aged, very type A, the kind of person who thrives on committee meetings and exclamation points in emails. And Marlene, bless her soul, decided that lawn maintenance would be her personal crusade. First came the mass email. Lawns must be kept to regulation height to preserve the beauty of our community. Okay, sure. Reasonable enough. 2 weeks later, I got my first letter. Your lawn appears slightly over the acceptable height. Please ensure it is visibly neat and uniform. Now here's the thing, there's no actual measurement listed anywhere in the HOA rules. Visibly neat and uniform is entirely subjective. I even checked the HOA handbook and the county code. Nada. But fine, I mowed again. Another letter arrived a week later. Your lawn is still not up to community standards. I started getting annoyed. I emailed Marlene directly, asking, what exactly is the regulation height? Her reply, please use common sense. We expect a neat, uniform appearance that aligns with the neighborhood standard. Common sense? That's rich, considering my lawn looked the same as everyone else's. But it was clear that for whatever reason, Marlene had locked her sights on me. That weekend, I was out mowing when my neighbor, Tom, came over. Man, she's sending you letters too? She told me my garden gnome wasn't tasteful. We laughed. I told Tom I had an idea brewing. Cue the spite. I ordered a precision lawn ruler, the kind used by golf course groundskeepers, marked in quarter-inch increments. When it arrived, I spent a good hour meticulously trimming my lawn to exactly 2 inches. A height recommended for our type of grass and perfectly within reason. But I didn't stop there. I made 4 laminated signs and staked them around my front yard. 2 inches. Maintained in accordance with HOA guidelines. Each sign had a QR code that linked to the county landscaping standards, which, again, had no mandated grass height. Come Monday morning, my lawn looked like a showroom. Perfectly cut, lush, bright green, with the signs proudly displayed. The next day, I got another letter. Please remove the signs. They are not in line with community aesthetic. But this time, I was ready. When that latest letter landed in my mailbox, please remove the signs. They are not in line with community aesthetic. I almost laughed out loud. You see, I'd already done my homework. The HOA rules had an entire section about lawn maintenance and exterior decor. Signs weren't prohibited unless they were political, advertising, or offensive. Mine were simply informational, literally quoting the HOA's own guidelines. So I emailed Marlene. Per the HOA handbook, Section 8, Paragraph 2, informational signage related to property upkeep is permitted. If this is changed, please provide the updated policy. Her reply came fast and curt. The signs are not prohibited per se, but we ask that you consider the visual harmony of the community. Visual harmony. The perfect subjective excuse. I left the signs up. That week, something magical happened. Neighbors started noticing. Tom, the garden gnome guy, put up his own sign, Gnome Zone, tastefully curated in accordance with community aesthetic. Another neighbor measured her rose bushes and added a sign that read, compliant with recommended rose height standards. Within 2 weeks, half the block was sporting tongue-in-cheek compliance signs. We had mailbox within federal height guidelines, driveway pressure washed per HOA email of April 10th, flagpole meets HOA approved height. Our street had become a living protest, a passive-aggressive art installation. Then came the kicker. The regional HOA representative scheduled a surprise visit, reportedly after receiving an unusually high number of aesthetic complaints from Marlene. We all knew she was trying to escalate the situation. The day of the visit, I was outside watering my perfectly trimmed 2-inch lawn when the rep, Mr. Evans, arrived. He walked the street with a clipboard, looking amused at the array of signs. When he reached my yard, he stopped and chuckled. You must be Dave. Guilty. I smiled. He pulled out the HOA handbook. You are 100% within your rights here, and your lawn looks better than most I've seen this month. He winked and moved on. Word spread fast. Later that afternoon, we heard that Marlene had been formally reprimanded for excessive and subjective enforcement. At the next HOA meeting, which I happily attended, the board announced a review of enforcement procedures and emphasized the need for clear, measurable standards going forward. A week later, Marlene stepped down as HOA president. Personal reasons, the email said. Sure. The signs gradually came down after that, but the camaraderie on our street? That stuck around. Now every time I mow my lawn, I do it with a little smile. And my trusty precision ruler? It's hanging in my garage, ready just in case. Because sometimes, friends, you don't need to fight dirty. You just need to fight exactly as they asked you to out of spite. I've worked in corporate long enough to know when to pick my battles. But sometimes when someone gives you a golden opportunity to be spitefully obedient, you've got to take the shot. I work for a mid-sized tech company. Our department is about 25 people. We're a chill team, mostly engineers and designers with a solid get the work done, don't sweat the small stuff vibe. Except for Carla. Carla is our new operations manager, and she's one of those every detail must be perfect types. She loves process for the sake of process, spreadsheets for the sake of spreadsheets. And she has an unholy need to micromanage. At our last quarterly meeting, Carla decided that all employee celebrations must be appropriate and aligned with HR policies. Apparently, someone had ordered a slightly risque cake for a retirement party 6 months ago, and now we were all being punished. Fast forward to last month, my teammate Jason's birthday was coming up. Jason's a great guy, laid back, funny, beloved by the whole team. Traditionally, we'd pitch in, grab a fun cake, decorate the break room, and enjoy a casual party. This year, Carla assigned me the task of planning it. Why? Because I had the bandwidth. Translation, I made the mistake of answering an email too quickly. Here's where it gets spicy. Carla called me into her office for a 15-minute meeting about the cake. I kid you not. She said, I just want to be crystal clear, the cake must be appropriate. No themes, no personal jokes, no colorful language, no questionable shapes. Keep it plain and suitable for a professional environment. We cannot risk another HR complaint. I blinked. So just a cake? She nodded, hands folded like a school principal. Yes. A plain, professional cake. No exceptions. I could see my coworkers through the glass wall, smirking behind their monitors. They knew what was coming. Q obeyed out of spite mode. I ordered the blandest, most corporate cake imaginable. A plain white sheet cake from a chain grocery store. No colors. No sprinkles. No frosting flowers. For the inscription, I selected the most neutral message possible. Happy birthday, employee. Printed in plain Times New Roman centered. That's it. No exclamation point. When I picked it up, the bakery clerk looked at me like I'd just asked her to print the terms and conditions of a mortgage. This is what you want on the cake? She asked. Exactly, I replied with a grin. Come party day, I placed the cake in the break room and gathered the team. Reactions ranged from howling laughter to utter disbelief. People took pictures. Jason, bless him, laughed so hard he nearly cried. When Carla walked in and saw it, her face went pale. "What is this?" she stammered. I smiled. A plain, professional cake. No themes. No jokes. Just like you asked. Carla stood there in stunned silence, staring at the cake. "Happy birthday, employee" in black times New Roman on stark white icing. The only thing missing was a corporate logo. Meanwhile, the rest of the team was cracking up. Someone quipped, "Wow, I feel celebrated just reading that." Another joked, "Did legal approve this cake?" Jason, still laughing, posed next to it for a photo, giving a deadpan thumbs up. Carla, however, was clearly fuming. "This is not what I meant," she said through clenched teeth. I kept my tone polite, but it is appropriate. No themes, no jokes, no questionable shapes. Just a plain, professional cake per your instructions. She tried to save face. "Well, the important thing is that everyone enjoys themselves." She forced a smile and quickly retreated. But the damage, or victory, was done. The cake became a legend. Photos circulated throughout the office. One of our designers mocked up a fake HR poster. "Celebrate birthdays the corporate way. Ask about our employee cake today." Even our department head stopped by, laughed, and said, "Well, Carla can't say you didn't follow instructions." Later that week, Carla called me into her office again. She started with, "I think you misunderstood my guidance about the cake." I stayed perfectly straight-faced. I followed it to the letter. No jokes, no themes, completely professional. I even slid my notes from our original meeting across her desk where I'd written down her exact words. She glanced at them and sighed. "Fine. Just use better judgment next time." "Oh, I will." And it didn't end there. At the next team birthday, 2 weeks later, one of our other coworkers, without consulting me, ordered a similar cake. "Happy birthday, valued contributor." Same plain font. Same bland white sheet cake. By now, it had become a running office joke. People started making suggestions. "Happy birthday, stakeholder. Enjoy your designated celebration period." Recognition of your existence. Carla didn't fight it. I think she realized the more she pushed, the more we'd lean into the literal interpretation. The best part? Morale actually improved. The ridiculous cakes became a fun tradition. Even HR, the actual HR team, not just Carla, thought it was hilarious. Jason told me later. "Best office birthday I've ever had. And honestly, the most memorable." So now whenever we get a new hire, someone tells them, "By the way, when it's your birthday here, prepare for the most professional cake of your life." Because sometimes the sweetest victories come when you obey the rules exactly as they asked. Out of spite. Look, I've never been a fashion-forward kind of guy. I'm mid-30s, software developer, jeans and a button-down type. I show up on time, write good code, and don't cause trouble. Which is why what happened at my office a couple of months ago annoyed the hell out of me. We're a tech startup. The kind where the founders wore hoodies to pitch meetings. Business casual was always fine. The CEO wore sneakers and a t-shirt that said "Move fast, break stuff" for 2 years straight. But then we got new middle management and with it a new operations director named Mark. Mark came from some old-school consulting firm and decided his new mission was to professionalize the culture. Cue new policies, meeting minutes, badge checks, and of course, a new dress code memo. Now, I wasn't worried. The memo said, employees should present a polished, professional appearance consistent with a business environment. And it specifically listed examples: dress shirts, slacks, clean shoes. Exactly what I already wore. But Mark wasn't satisfied. A week after the memo went out, he called me into his office. "You need to step up your appearance." I looked down at my outfit: navy chinos, collared shirt, brown leather shoes. Nothing sloppy. "How so?" I asked. "Just more professional," he said, vague as hell. "More polished. You're a senior developer. You set an example." I asked if I was in violation of the dress code. He said no, but the spirit of it matters. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about clothes. It was about control. I left the meeting irritated. My team was shipping a major release. We were working weekends. And now I was supposed to worry about whether my outfit looked polished enough for Mark's approval? Fine. That Saturday, I visited a high-end menswear shop. Spent more than I should have on a beautiful 3-piece charcoal suit. Added a pocket square, a vintage pocket watch, and a pair of glossy black Oxfords. Monday morning, I walked in dressed like I was about to close a $1 million merger. Reactions were immediate. Whoa, big meeting today? You look like a CEO. Damn, should we all be wearing suits now? Mark spotted me from across the floor. His face went through several stages: surprise, smug approval, then confusion. Later that day, in our stand-up, he gestured to me and said, "See, that's the kind of effort I want to see." The room went silent. My coworkers were trying not to laugh. And that was just the beginning. After that stand-up where Mark singled me out, the vibe in the office shifted. At first, people just laughed about it. "Look at you, Mr. Wall Street. Hey, when's the IPO? Do I need to start wearing a tie?" But after a couple days, my coworkers started to get ideas. On Wednesday, one of our designers, who usually wore graphic tees, showed up in a blazer and bow tie. On Thursday, our project manager wore a suit jacket and slacks. By Friday, our team looked like we were attending a shareholder meeting. Mark, to his credit, seemed oblivious. "I'm glad to see the culture catching on," he said in the next email update. Of course, nobody mentioned that we were coordinating it in our team chat with hashtags like #FashionRevolution and #CorporateChic. The following week, I took it up a notch. I started carrying an old leather briefcase and wore my pocket watch on a chain. I also had a friend print me a name tag that read, "Senior Software Architect ESQ." Our QA lead brought in a top hat and left it on his desk when not in meetings. Someone else started wearing white gloves just for fun. At this point, the entire floor was in on it except Mark. The rest of upper management? They were starting to notice. On the second Friday, our VP of engineering, who actually understands our culture, called me aside and asked, smiling, "You guys doing this to make a point?" I grinned. "Just following the spirit of the dress code." He shook his head, laughed, and said, "Message received." Apparently, he wasn't the only one paying attention. That afternoon, an email from the CEO hit everyone's inbox. While we encourage professionalism, we also value comfort and authenticity. Business casual remains perfectly acceptable. Please don't feel pressured to overdress. Boom. The following Monday, I was back in chinos and a button-down. The top hat disappeared. The pocket watch returned to my drawer. But Mark? He wasn't thrilled. He cornered me after lunch. "I think you embarrassed me in front of the leadership team." I replied calmly, "I simply followed your feedback and the company dress code." Then I walked away. A month later, during a reorg, Mark was moved off ops and into a non-management role. Rumor was that leadership didn't love how he'd been trying to fix a culture that wasn't broken. And the best part? The inside joke lives on. Every time someone has a big meeting now, they wear a tie just for laughs. We still call it going full Mark. So yeah, sometimes the best way to deal with vague rules is to lean all the way in with style. I've been in sales for almost 20 years. Long enough to know that great client relationships aren't built on pricing tricks or shiny new strategies. They're built on trust. Apparently, my new VP didn't get that memo. A few months ago, our company hired a new VP of sales. We'll call him Brent. Brent came in from a much bigger firm and seemed hellbent on proving himself fast. In his first week, he scheduled a tower meeting with my entire team and gave us a PowerPoint about modernizing the sales approach, which sounded fine until we got to slide 23. Aggressively upsell all existing clients to new premium packages, no exceptions. Now, let me be clear, we're a B2B firm. Our clients are loyal because we've delivered consistent service, not because we nickel and dime them with constant upsells. So I raised my hand and asked, "What if the client doesn't need the new package or explicitly declines?" Brent smiled like he was addressing a child. "Then you haven't sold it correctly. They all need it. The market is moving. We're moving with it. And let me repeat, no exceptions." Privately, I knew this was going to backfire. For context, I manage several legacy accounts, clients I've worked with for years through multiple leadership changes. I know their businesses inside and out. And I know when an upsell makes sense and when it's just a money grab. But Brent was serious. Within a week, we had mandatory scripts to use on calls. He started tracking our upsell rates. I could see where this was going. He wanted to pad his Q2 numbers to impress the board. I wasn't about to ruin hard-earned relationships to make Brent look good. So I decided to do this by the book. I spoke with our legal counsel and asked if I could record client calls with consent. They said yes as long as I disclosed it at the start of each call, which is standard practice anyway. Then I created a simple template. Email offering the new package. Follow-up call, recorded. Summary email documenting the conversation. For every client I knew would resist the upsell, I followed this to the letter. On each call, I would explain the new package, its features, and ask if they wanted to proceed. If they said no, which many did, I documented it meticulously. Meanwhile, Brent started pushing harder. He sent me a Slack message. I noticed your upsell rate is lagging. What's the issue? I replied. All client responses are fully documented. Happy to share. He didn't respond, but I was just getting started. Over the next couple of weeks, the pressure ramped up. Brent sent out weekly leaderboard emails highlighting the top reps by upsell percentage. My name was notably absent. I knew he was watching, but I stuck to my process. Every single client got a proper pitch, every decline was documented in writing and with recorded call logs with consent. I wasn't about to let years of trust go up in smoke because some new VP wanted a vanity metric. Then came the meeting. Brent scheduled a one-on-one with me and our legal counsel. The invite subject was Q2 Sales Strategy Alignment. I knew what this was really about. We sat down in a small conference room. Brent started. Your numbers are concerning. We need to understand why you're not driving adoption of the new package. I looked at our legal counsel, then calmly said, I have detailed documentation for every account. Would you like me to present it? Brent smirked. Sure. Let's see it. So I pulled out a binder, yes, an actual binder, and a USB drive. Inside were emails to each client, call transcripts, audio recordings, summary notes signed off by the clients. I began walking through them one by one. Client A, happy with current plan, no interest in upgrade. Client B, budget approved through 2025, cannot add new expenses. Client C, already declined during Q1 contract negotiation. And so on. About halfway through, Brent's smirk faded. He shifted in his chair and glanced at legal. Our counsel leaned forward. From what I see here, these are very clear client refusals, documented appropriately. Forcing further contact after a documented decline could expose us to liability for harassment, especially with long-term clients. Brent's jaw tightened. But we need the numbers. Counsel replied. Not at the expense of compliance or client trust. Checkmate. After that meeting, Brent backed off for a week. Then came the real kicker. I got wind that Brent had gone to the board and blamed the sales team for lack of alignment on the new strategy. Unfortunately for him, one of my biggest clients sits on an industry advisory board we sponsor. I'd already given that client a heads up about the upsell push and they weren't pleased. Sure enough, the board meeting turned into a roast session. By the next week, Brent was noticeably quieter in Slack. A few days later, an internal memo announced he was transitioning to pursue new opportunities. In other words, he was gone. Our SVP later pulled me aside. Smart move, documenting everything. Saved us a lot of trouble. I nodded. Just doing my job. Sometimes the best revenge is simply doing things by the book and letting the facts do the talking. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And tell us in the comments what's a time you did something out of spite. We'd love to hear it.